Go. We are streaming on YouTube Live. Hey, everybody, welcome to Finding Certainty. Here on our weekly talk show, we unpack the various characteristics and elements that lead to more certainty in our lives and in our businesses. First of every month, the first Wednesday, I do a monologue. I've been going through the alphabet from A is for accountability to most recently, I talked about quiet confidence. These are all principles that contribute to more certainty in our lives. The other weeks of the month, I have a guest on who is either demonstrating certainty, they've figured it out, they've achieved it, or are achieving it in their lives, or they're helping others to do the same. Our guest today, John Kennedy, is doing exactly that. John is the inventor, the developer behind what is called, tell me the name exactly, John.
Combat brain training. And don't forget the brain. I don't teach combat.
Combat brain training. And it's unique, and we're going to get into what it is and how it works, but it's unique because it's the only program of its kind that has actually been approved by the Special Operations High Command. Right? This is they're the trainers for the SEALs, for the Rangers, for the tip of the spear here with the U.S. military. Now, as a U.S. Army veteran myself, I worked in counterterrorism. I worked in counterintelligence. I'm very aware of the threats that are facing America. And we need our warriors to be at the top of their game, right? And that is exactly what you do, John, and have been doing, and not just for the military, but also for business, for high net worth individuals and others, and so forth and so on. So let's jump into it. I always like to share two reasons why I've invited this specific guest to be on Finding Certainty. And the first is that all of us are looking for ways to perform at a higher level, to be more efficient, to execute on our goals and our endeavors, our business, et cetera, even in our relationships, right? And so we're looking for ways to do that better. That's a big part of what this show is about, and that's exactly what John is helping others to do, both within the military and without. So I thought you as our listener or listeners would be very interested in hearing what he's doing and how he's doing it. Secondly, as a veteran myself, I really do care about our warriors, our armed forces, making sure they're staying safe out there, making sure they're executing on their jobs and on their responsibilities, but doing so in a way that protects them and those around them, both their compadres, but also the people that they are even serving, the people that they're even in conflicts against. There are ways to do things that are can be tragic, can be devastating, and even dangerous. There are other ways that we can do things that are more efficient, more safer, and have long-reaching effects. All of this is part of what we're going to be talking about today with Mr. Kennedy here. So, John, thanks for being here on Finding.
Thanks, Patrick.
We appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you, Patrick. Thank you for having me on. It's great.
Absolutely. So, we always talk a little bit about where you're from and kind of what brought you to where you are on the show. I like to stroll down memory lane, if you will.
Yeah.
And maybe tell us, I know you live here in Las Vegas now, but just as I do, I'm in Henderson. And but tell us where you grew up and a little bit background. What led you to where you are today, what you're doing today?
Well, it's interesting. One of my favorite Steve Jobs quotes is, "You can only connect the dots looking backwards." Sometimes we end up where we are now. We have no idea how we got there, and you look backwards and you see how they connected. So I actually grew up in a house built in 1719 up in New York, and we spent most of our time out exploring. Trying to otherwise, my dad had 3 younger brothers. We had lots of chores, right? So if we were up in the woods, he couldn't find us to do the chores, but chores were good. And in hindsight, knowing what I do about neuroplasticity, that was actually a very good way to grow up, because as children, we actually learn most from interaction with our environment and modeling from adults, which is why I always counsel parents, don't put your young kids on a phone or an iPad all the time, because they're not building those foundational cognitive skills that we rely on later in life. Then very fortunately, my dad was director of patent and licensing for IBM for all of Asia Pacific. So we actually lived in Tokyo for 5 years, which was a phenomenal experience.
What an experience.
Oh man, living in a foreign country. Actually, we just had a reunion a few months ago back in Tokyo. It was great to keep up. My buddies from my school, we still, keep in touch on WhatsApp. But it was a very unique experience because the school itself had 50 nationalities and about 200 kids. I had 8 nationalities on my basketball team. So you very quickly learn that teamwork is not about how much money you have, what race you are, what religion you are. Can you play, right? Can you play defense? Can you pass the ball? Can you, so that was a phenomenal experience. And one of the things I used to do is on the weekends was, because in Tokyo, everybody wanted to speak English. I get some friends and we would try to get ourselves lost by lunch. So phenomenal transportation system. We'd go to the end of a train line, end of a bus line, and then find our way back. The goal was to actually try to learn Japanese, but the real thing that I learned was how to solve problems, because the whole idea was how to solve problems in a foreign environment. And that kind of led me all the way up to my consulting career. So I was actually probably I had a very unique niche back in Chicago. So I just moved here from Chicago about 1.5 years ago, and I did some very high level project rescue for big companies, Aon, Motorola. Probably the largest project I ran was the entire Y2K transition for a division of Motorola. And so basically really high exposure projects that were stuck, right? They were way behind, they were way over budget. They would bring me in to basically help them save money by getting things back on track. And I developed a kind of a unique proprietary way to do that. And I love doing it. I was actually, my dream job was, I was at an insurance company, big insurance company. I just completed a great project. And I was about to go in and talk to the CFO because I knew they were going to give me a bigger project, and I was happy. And then I got an email from the Marines saying that they'd accepted my proposal to try to develop my program. So give up my dream job, making more money, or go help save lives. I got my contract with the Marine Corps. And that was completely changed my life, completely changed my life. So this actual contract required that I had to pass a very rigid experiment in order to get funding. And so what I was proposing, no one had ever proposed before. I actually had an opportunity to present this to General Doug Stone. He was the base commander at 29 Palms, Marine's largest training base. And after 3 days of myself and other contractors being exposed to as much about IEDs. Now, IEDs are the improvised explosive devices that kill so many of our guys. So dangerous. You can have a bomb in a pile of garbage in a corner and a trigger man a mile away. So that was the most devastating force against our troops. And so the goal was to try to find some innovative way to help. And there was contractors from all over the world, big guys like Motorola and Boeing, small guys. And we're all trying to find some way to save lives of these Marines. And good stuff came, right? Better armor, better radio jammers. But for me, the thing that struck me was the guides who led us around all had the same story. They'd all survived an IED attack. And the consistent story was, I started down this one street or this one alley. Something told me something was wrong and I went a different way. The guys behind me kept going and they got attacked. So why do we have 2 young Marines, similar demographics, similar training, and one has better what we would call intuition, right? Not just sensing the danger, but actually acting on it. So I'm thinking about this all the way through. There's no way I can come up with better armor or anything else. I'm shaking hands with General Stone, and I just had this kind of this God vision. What if I could do for the brain what I do for business operations? What if I could identify the critical processes to the thinking process, to find them, make them more efficient, and then use neuroplasticity, which is the incredible capability God's given our brains to change from repetition. So everything we repeat, say it, do it, think it, starts to make those ruts deeper. So I knew that neuroplasticity was going to be the key, and then an agile approach, which actually means continuous improvement. Fortunately, I found research from MIT that said a very specific type of non-digital stimulation will start to change the brain immediately. Not just in a day or a week or a month. We know that always happens. You know, you throw a baseball 10,000 times, you get better at it. It's the brain that's remembering as well as the body. So by using that type of stimulation, I was actually able to create my program. Now, we still don't know if it's going to work. So this experiment, you know, I'm a consultant, right? So consultants, you're successful, you get fired. Okay. There's all kinds of other research experiments going on, psychology based, you know, and they've got funding and they're going to be forever. But I knew I needed to make a difference fast. So I only had 3 months. And I embedded with one of the platoons in the Marines. So there's about 40 guys in a platoon. And because it was a full DoD experiment, we had a control platoon, which was randomly chosen. And then we had the platoon that I would, the experiment platoon that I could choose to work with. And I chose to work with the worst performing platoon, because if I can help these guys at all, I wanted to help these guys. And so they had suffered a lot of losses the last cycle. 16 guys had died in IED attacks and the helicopter crash, a lot of post-traumatic stress, 3 attempted suicides, failing a lot of their, you know, their objectives. So I embedded with them for 3 months. And it was the most phenomenal experience for me. Boy Scouts on steroids with the most wonderful guys in the world. So we're out, like PTA, we're out in training ranges for 3 weeks straight. No, you know, no hot water. You know, no. It was just bonding with these guys was amazing, and they really contribute a lot because I would experiment with different exercises to get them engaged to see if I could really make a difference in changing their cognitive function very quickly. So it's interesting, 3 months later, and we did a before and after cognitive skills test of the platoon. So it was a real experiment from the control platoon and my platoon. My platoon's significantly higher, but the most significant thing was real world performance, because they were now not only the best performing platoon in that battalion, but when they went through final pre-deployment training back at 29 Palms, the instructor said it was the best performance she'd ever seen. So then, you know, my program kind of spread just by reputation. So the next group was MARSOC, Marine Special Operations. So worked with them. They all did better. Every group, and then snipers, Navy SEALs. I got into the to the schoolhouse there. Every group that I worked with performed significantly better on any metric that they were using than their peers.
So John, let me cut you off a little bit, because before we get into too much of what it is and how it works, I want to go back to something you said earlier. You talked about growing up in Tokyo, right? I had the same experience. I lived in New Zealand as a child.
Okay, right?
My dad lived was working in the South Pacific, and we lived there. That's where I started elementary, et cetera, et cetera.
That's great.
As you look at that experience, you passed by that pretty quickly, and I want to just make a plug for it, because I believe that one of the ways to create more depth and more understanding, more maturity, and ultimately more certainty, right, in our lives, is to have that kind of experience, whether it's going into the military, joining the Peace Corps for a year, going on a mission for your church. It doesn't matter what you do it. Ideally, you do it while your kids are young and let them experience it while they're growing up, right? And then, why do you think that is? I know this is a little bit of a diversion, but why do you think it's so impactful? I mean, you said it's an experience in a lifetime. I completely agree, but why do you think that is?
That's such a great, that's such a great observation, Patrick, and I would agree 100%. And anytime you can travel, you know, a lot of parents, they don't want to travel because their kids are young. Bring your kids, right? Because, you know, what we learn in life, what's important, we don't learn in a textbook. We learn from our experiences. And being in a foreign country where you're the minority, for one thing, right? And you have to learn all the new cultures. One of the teachers from the American school, one of the other schools there, actually wrote a book called Third Culture Kids, which is very interesting. And his observation was, when you live overseas for a few years, you're a third culture. You're not anymore really part of your normal culture, your native culture, and you're not fully a part of the new culture. You're kind of like your own. And so people that have experiences like ours, Patrick, we connect because of that experience we've had living in a foreign culture. Is just so powerful. I agree. I think that's the best thing parents can do. If they're going to travel, make sure they take their kids.
Well,
for
to
sure.
that point, we talk about how to create more certainty in our lives, and ultimately, it's about knowing despite what happens to us, despite what comes into our path. It happens to us, it happens with us, it happens good or bad,
Or
right? Positive
yeah,
or negative. I think one of the skills is developing perspective and
mm,
fortitude, being able to take things in stride and not get thrown off. I mean, unfortunately, life is hard, right? Mortality is
right,
it,
right.
like they say, life's a what, and it comes at you fat, and then and then
Yeah,
you die, right? But they
yeah,
I think that experience of living overseas and immersing yourself into different cultures and into difficult experiences, maybe it is as a missionary, is as a soldier or a sailor
right.
or something. It forces you to change and to grow and to develop different skill sets, different, I say, perspective and fortitude. I think those are the two of the most important skill sets that we can
Yeah,
develop. And
absolutely.
the more, some people, we're in our comfort zone and we're afraid to step into the dark. But the more we can do that and allow our kids to do it, help them to do that, the more
Yeah,
our entire lives will have more certainty and we'll be able to roll with the punches and handle whatever comes at us, right? Good or bad, devastating, whatever it might be. I just think
yeah.
it's an important conversation. And I think it plays into some of what you are teaching subconsciously and through your methodology, teaching these soldiers and other clients.
Yeah,
So it's so important, right? It's
yeah,
just
no, that's such a great perspective. Again, it's like, and really, certainty comes from that your confidence, right? So when you're a child and you're in a foreign country and you got to get along with people, you can't speak the language, right? You develop your own confidence, you develop your communication skills, you develop, and as opposed to just sitting isolated somewhere like so many kids do, where they never stretch themselves.
yeah.
When you're in a foreign country like we were, I mean, you're stretching your comfort zone every day. I mean, I had to take 3 different trains to get to school back and forth, and I didn't speak English, and the trains weren't in English, right? So I didn't speak Japanese, so that was a just getting comfortable and being confident and being certain that I knew which stop I had to get off at. And so I didn't have to count anymore because I learned the language. So I think we're constantly growing when we're in situations like that,
Well,
just
and
out of necessity.
it is you become more confident. I always talk about with my salespeople and my kids and stuff about this confidence cycle that we go through. And I don't know how this applies with what you teach, but we can maybe unpack it a little bit.
Yeah,
But um, we really start out with fear and doubt, right? Can we do this? And then
right.
we move to there's this uncertainty, and then we move to kind of the next step up is hope. We hope we can, and then we go to the next step and we start seeing some evidences, getting a little bit of experience on our belt. We believe we can or have faith that we can. Then we see more evidence. So that faith grows into belief, that belief grows into knowledge, that knowledge grows into confidence. I do
Right.
think it's really important that we put ourselves into uncomfortable situations.
Yes.
I
Yeah.
remember a time my son was about 5 years old. I have 5 children, but my one of my sons was 5 years old, and we were at McDonald's. And he didn't like his Happy Meal toy, right? He was not happy. His brother got a different one, and so he wanted me to go up and exchange it for him. And I said, "No way, man." I said, "If you want to exchange your toy, you got to go do it." And he's
Yeah.
like, "Whoa, no, 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 Dad, I can't do that." I was like, "You can do it.
Yeah.
Just walk up there and ask them if they'll give you the different toy." And so he said, "Okay, I can do that." Right? And he walks up to the counter, and he was literally shorter than the counter.
Yeah.
Holds his hand up, saying, "Can I exchange my Happy Meal toy?" And they gave him They even gave him two because they were so impressed. And he comes back so excited, right, that
Yeah.
he had done it. And now he's a captain of the dive team at Cal State. He's the most
Wow.
kid I know, Division I athlete, right?
Wow. Yeah.
I think that you have to help your kids develop those skills, right?
Yeah.
We have
Yeah.
to develop them within ourselves. if we truly want to have a full and certain life.
Right.
Indian gospel according to Patrick, but as
I would agree.
I mean, what are your thoughts on that?
No, I would agree. And it's interesting. It's giving me perspective. So the way that my program is designed, and creates this stimulation that changes the brain so fast. Very, very simple. Though the basic exercises are just symbols on a piece of paper. I mean, my daughter was 5 when I developed for the Marines. I wanted children to be able to. So it's very disarming. But in order to do the exercises, and they're not digital, because we want to engage as many parts of our brain and body as possible. Each step is a little bit harder, kind of what you're talking about. So many times I'll say, okay, let's try this variation. Oh, I don't know if I can do that, right? But they start to anticipate it. Just like in life, a little dopamine gets released, you feel excited. And then when they accomplish it, everything improves so much, right? Their brain's faster, they're more focused, their confidence goes up. So typically within 25 or 30 minutes, they're doing things that they couldn't have done when we started. And so I think that's exactly what we're talking about. We're kind of compressing it to a short amount of time, but that process is the same. Stretching ourselves to do something we're not sure if we can do it. Then when we can accomplish it, that just extends our comfort level. In fact, one of my clients, one of the top quarterbacks in the Canadian Football League, Trevor Harris, he said that his comfort zone is stretching his comfort zone, right? So always one more, right? If he's doing push-ups, he does one more, right? If he's running, he'll do a little bit more, right? So make stretching your comfort zone, and then nothing is too challenging.
One of my favorite employers, who was the general manager of a company I worked for, I was the sales manager, and he was one of those that he'd say it all the time. We're never satisfied, are we? We're never satisfied, right? And he was referring to sales and what we could do and as a team and getting the sales and installers to work together and getting a better ROI on our marketing. And he just was like that. He was a great example of someone who was constantly pushing the envelope. Yeah. And to his credit, we grew that branch from $3.5 million a year to 7.5 the next year to 15.8 the next year, 20 million a year. I mean, the most common question we got from corporate, and we became the #1 branch out of 65 offices nationwide.
Wow.
And the most common question they asked is, what the hell are you guys doing out
there? Must be the water, right?
Yeah, it was a lot of things. I mean, a lot of contributors.
Sure.
But having that mindset of you're never satisfied, it's not that you have unrealistic expectations or you're demanding on your kids or something. It's just right. It's just raising the bar and expecting more and more of yourself. And
absolutely
working with experts like yourself with different mechanisms and programs to constantly stretch your brain and stretch your capacity. And I really think that's where a lot of satisfaction in life comes from, when you see that bar rising ever so
gradually. And, in the same time, one of the things we have to get rid of what holds us back as well. So one of the big differentiators of my program is when people are doing, especially the harder ones, I tell them don't stop to fix mistakes. Right, which is one of the hardest things for us to do. One of the women I was training, when I told her that, she started crying. She goes, my whole life I was told to be perfect. Well, when you're trying to be perfect, you had anxiety. You were so worried about being perfect, right? Whereas your boss was saying, it's not about being perfect, right? It's that mindset of continuing to grow. And so you have to release your compulsion to fix mistakes, to give yourself the freedom then to do that, to get out there and keep going. Yeah, absolutely.
That was hard for me when I went through your test.
Yeah, I remember everybody
trying to go back and fix the mistake. You said just keep going, keep going.
Yeah, so, that's right.
So officially, you are what's known as a
neuroplastician.
Neuroplastician. I'm having a hard time remembering your combat brain training. That's a mouthful, and neuroplastician. That's a mouthful. So I have a question about that, because we have a very large division of our company that works with seniors, and it's called Remote Care Today. It's for any senior who who wants to have remote therapeutic management, remote patient monitoring, and they get support. They get weekly check-ins. They get all these things. And one of the things, it's actually a new program we're just rolling out this month, is about it's a series of exercises and so forth for seniors that improves the neuroplasticity of their brain.
Yeah.
Right? It's a big deal these days. Medicare is adding more and more CPT codes. They're realizing how important this is. And I'm curious how you figured this out. How did you learn it first? And then let's get into how it works. Okay, why it's so important.
Yeah, no, that's a good question. So the term neuroplasticity comes from a book Norman Doidge wrote back in 2007 when I was trying to figure out how to do this program. And basically, there's several of us out there. I've met some of the others you even mentioned. People typically outside the traditional medical field that have developed ways to physically change the brain, so that using neuroplasticity in positive ways. I mean, there's a guy down in South Africa who's an amazing job helping people overcome symptoms of Parkinson's. I met another one, Yuri from up in Wisconsin, who actually has a headset, and he's with a camera, and he's helped people who lost their sight see again. He reconnects the electrodes to the tongue because the tongue is very receptive. Incredible. And so now so they know how to process images because they lost their sight as an adult. They just couldn't get them in there because they lost their eyesight. So now the camera's taking it in, filtering it through the tongue to the brain, and you can actually see in the brain the parts where the tongue connects it is now getting larger. Wow. Right? Because that's where the connections are. And so that's amazing. And that's basically what I do. So again, exercises are so simple, and we've done great work with seniors before too. Actually, I did a pilot at a senior care facility in California. I trained or certified some of their therapists. They said it was the most popular program they've ever done for the seniors. And in fact, the problem was more and more seniors kept wanting to join because it was so popular, because we're actually really physically changing the brain. And that's actually neuroplasticity is. It's really, and the basic program, the way I originally presented to the Marines, was targeted neuroplasticity training. So we're targeting very specific underlying cognitive skills with neuroplasticity. We're just training, that's that repetition that goes over it. The reason it's called combat brain training is because it was developed for the military. So the goal was to reduce casualties of guys going into combat, and then also help accelerate recovery from guys coming out of combat with what we would call the wounds of war. And that's why we work with strokes, concussions, Alzheimer's, ADHD, autism. Great success with kids with ADHD and autism. Again, we're not trying to fix anything. We're just rewiring the brain to do what it needs to do to be optimal very, very quickly. So that's probably one of the most rewarding parts of what we do as well.
I know from our senior work, I mean, we're the #1 dealer in the country out of 3,500 dealers for this organization, and we work with hundreds of thousands of Medicare patients. Their #1 fear is loss of cognitive ability.
Yeah, right.
The top 3 are falls, scams, and cognition, right?
Yeah.
Losing memory and balance and cognition. And these neuroplasticity exercises make extraordinary difference, right? The entire program, the whole RPM program and the RTM, it's so successful that it's known to reduce hospitalizations by 67%, rehospitalization by 76%, falls by an enormous percentage, and
it's amazing.
It's incredible, right? So
well, when that does it illustrates.
How did you figure this out? Just from reading the book, from studying it? Did you go to a course about it, or what? How did you become a neuroplastician, right?
So, just to go on what you just said just indicates how our brains continue to change even when we're older, right? The powerful effect we're getting from seniors. So it's interesting. Again, I'm a consultant, right? I'm not a neuroscientist, or there's a problem that needed to be solving, a very important problem that needed to be solved. And so I took my consulting, applied it to it, passed this experiment with glowing colors, and just completely changed. Now, the interesting part of this is that I did some research, but I had a hypothesis and I knew it could work, and we did it. So no one I ever work with cares about the research because they want to get better. Although there's reams and reams and reams and reams of research that support what I do, it's not research based. And I got a great endorsement on that. One of the ways I get my research is I take a neuroscientist or a psychiatrist or someone through the program, and then with their vast knowledge of research, they'll tell me exactly what's happening. So one said, for example, we're releasing dopamine. That's why you feel so good when you do that. Another, this is why it's so good for anti-aging. A neuroscientist out of Harvard said that we're flooding the brain with so much blood when we do these exercises that it's the most powerful anti-aging program in the world he's ever seen, because we lose our memory when the capillaries that feed our neurons dry out, right? So when we flood the brain with blood, the capillaries rejuvenate, we create neurogenesis, and we've actually put a brain scan on that can actually show that happening. But probably my favorite one was a neuroscientist from Northwestern. I took her through this and she goes, this could never have come from traditional research because that's all reductionist in nature, right? They want to find one factor and they build all this research over years. You know, I think there's kind of a joke in that community called what is 17 years? It takes 17 years to go from the research to actually something that works. Right. And I had 3 months. So, but the cool thing she said was it's just so holistic and so powerful. She said this must have come from God. So I take that as an endorsement from a neuroscientist that it's got, because that's what it is. I mean, and we always measure progress by real world, right? So many others, you have all these brain training programs, like the ones on a phone. They're basically useless for changing your brain to be positive. You always get better at the score, right? And they're actually designed to help you pass the assessments they give of cognitive skill, which is great. You want to do well on a test, but they have very minimal real world benefit because they don't connect to the real world. And so ours has always been, you know, focused on the real world improvements that just extend so much. I mean, you mentioned uncomfortable before. What I like to say is, because I work with everybody, I work with business guys, you know, kids. The differentiator is being uncomfortable. We talked about uncomfortable before. So I say I like to work with uncomfortable people. If someone's comfortable, they're perfectly happy what they're doing, they don't need to see me. But there's two ends of that spectrum. I just posted in LinkedIn recently about two of my two favorite clients, both young women in their late 20s. One I started working with several years ago. She'd fallen out of a tree, had a concussion, was in a coma for 4 months, could barely speak or use her hands or feet when I started with her. 2 weeks ago, I was at her wedding. She had recovered so much that she was able to walk down the aisle with her husband, which was so cool for me.
That's great.
And then my other one is Kat Perez. So she's the goalie of the Colombia national team. I started working with her a couple of years ago. She helped lead their team all the way through the World Cup quarterfinals. And then I actually work with, I'm going to have a session with her later today because she's in the South American tournament. So we have two women, similar ages, one at each end of the uncomfortable spectrum. One's very uncomfortable because she wants to get back to normal. And the other one's uncomfortable because she is already one of the top performers in the world, but she wants an edge. She wants to get even better. So, and then everyone in between, obviously.
She's my old boss. She never satisfied.
Yes. Always to be better, right? Exactly.
It was funny because we didn't really set out to be the number one branch. We just implemented some techniques and some principles that both between he and I that we knew worked, right? And it was 4 disciplines of execution from Franklin Covey and the accountability lessons taught in a book called the Oz Principle. And you know, we did these things, but so much of what we did was teaching our salespeople and our installers a different mindset and a different way of viewing each other. There was some animosity at first, and eventually
of course,
friends, right?
Yeah.
And so I'm curious to know, as you started to develop this methodology, this combat brain training, what is it that makes it so unique, that it makes it so powerful. Maybe you can explain what it is exactly, how it works.
Yeah,
Let's get into why it works so great, because I've experienced it myself, and I'm very interested, very intrigued by the whole science behind it.
So that's an excellent question, and because again, everything we do, everything we learn, whether you're going to go learn how to be a salesman, you're going to learn how to play baseball, you're going to learn, it's all based on neuroplasticity, what we repeat. And so from our model, there's actually 3 different levels where neuroplasticity impacts our brain, kind of like our computer, right? So if you have a computer, you have different applications. You may have a game, you got your office software, you got your browser. And you can upgrade any one of those, but it doesn't necessarily impact anything else. The applications on the computer kind of relate to what we do in life. So you could be a salesman, you could be a football player, you could be a soccer player, you could be a math teacher, right? Each one of those you got better at because you practice. And you practice and got better. But being the best quarterback in the world doesn't mean you can do math, right? Or it doesn't mean that you can sell, right? Because they're very isolated. Now, the operating system of the brain corresponds to psychology, which is where 99% of the brain training programs are. You've got sports psychologists, mental toughness coaches, you've got mindfulness, you've got mindset, all that kind of stuff deals with the mind, which is our operating system, right? It's how we filter information. And they can be very powerful. But again, even with the best mindfulness or mindset or whatever program, you still have to repeat it. Right? You don't go see your coach and then you're immediately better, right? Because again, it takes time. Now, the most powerful way to change your entire computer is just get a new one because the processor is faster, right? If you get a faster processor, the operating system works better and also every single one of your applications. And that's what makes us unique, is we focus specifically on the processor. So we can improve, and the single metric we use for everyone we work with, you might remember I measured you, is processing speed. How fast we process information is like the processor in your computer. So we can help people improve their processing speed from 10 to 20%, typically in about an hour. And then we keep working, we can improve that processing speed down to, by 30, 40, 50%. So imagine anything you do in your life, whether you're throwing a baseball, selling, whatever you're doing, having conversations, if you can do that, 30 to 40, 50% faster, that improves your life. I have a surgeon I work with who can do a 6-hour operation in 2 hours. So his whole life has changed, right? So he can see more patients, or he can get home earlier for his kids. So his whole life has changed.
Wow.
Because in that area, that's what he's doing better.
That's incredible.
So, yeah, that's
we became the #1 branch in the country out of 65. We were selling more than number 2 and number 3 combined.
That's great. Yes, right.
I remember, I wish I could give you credit, but I think we were implementing some of these principles without even knowing it, right? Without realizing it. We were getting our team to think differently and to work faster. So nuts and bolts, explain what it is. You've gone through it with me. Maybe explain just the actual methodology.
Yeah, so basically, again, it's just symbols on a piece of paper that a 5-year-old can do. So, but again, I've Navy SEALs, professional athletes, sales leaders, business leaders, because we make the decision-making process faster under stress and more focused, whatever we do, we're better. So typically I work with people over Zoom. I work one-on-one, I work with teams, I work with families. Teams is very effective. So if a team does these exercises together, not only does each person become more mentally efficient and agile very quickly, like within just a couple hours, but teams start to sync up as well. That was with the Marines. I trained a D1 basketball team this last year. When you sync up, then everyone is more aware of everybody else on the team and what happens. And so for teams, I do speaking, I speak in large conferences. I did a number of programs up at Southern Utah University, spoke as one of their keynotes, and then I worked with the gymnastics team for a week. They won their first ever conference championship. I worked with the local parents groups. I just loved it. So, because it doesn't really matter what anybody does, work with some autistic kids, they're going to improve their life. And that's how it works.
John, I think a little bit of that movie Limitless. Did you see the movie with Bradley?
Bradley Cooper. Yeah,
Bradley Cooper, right? And his was a drug. It was a off kind of off market drug or something that, but when he took it, you saw all of his senses open up. He could calculate faster, he could learn languages instantly, he saw things differently. I go back to your point about the soldiers who just had a sense that this was not a good street. Let's go down this street instead. Why is that? Do you think that is one of the outgrowths or one of the benefits of neuroplasticity? What is it, that we're just becoming more attuned? Are our senses just more? It's like our juices are flowing better, or what is it?
That comes from, so for those Marines, that came from the way they were raised. I mean, a lot of them grew up out in the woods. They have to be aware of this kind of stuff. But we create that by increasing what we call as a buffer of anticipation. So typically we make decisions, right here, right? We're consciously, sometimes we get overwhelmed.
Yeah.
But when one of the goals of the program is to increase what we call anticipation, which is another name for intuition. If your brain can anticipate that something's coming, it gives you an edge. That could be a conversation, it could be a sales call, be driving a car. Probably my favorite example is an Olympic skier. Yeah, threats for sure. So an Olympic skier I trained a few years ago said she can ski down the hill going 100 miles an hour, right? Faster without falling because she can see the snow conditions further out. Now, obviously the snow is the same and her eyes are the same, but instead of processing here and trying to make conscious decisions, now she's got this buffer of unconscious decision-making space. So she's looking ahead and her brain unconsciously is making all the adjustments that it needs to keep her up on her feet. And that applies to anything. When we create that buffer, and again, same thing with the military, every group we work with, whether it's pilots, snipers, SEALs, anybody, that manifested itself into their situations. So they made better decisions faster, save lives. And then you mentioned vet. We also do a lot of work with vets, helping them recover as well. Same program can help that.
So let me ask you this question. For years, I've talked and trained my teams about the reticular activator. Now, this reticular activating system, it's the part of the brain that filters out useless information, right? Or information that deems to not be important, because there's so much data coming at us all the time. If we had to process all of it, our brains would melt, right?
Right.
It's why, for example, somebody, well, it's why if somebody buys a new car, a friend of yours, you start seeing the car all over town, right? The best example for me was I saw the Italian Job, the movie, years ago. They had Mini Coopers in there, and I started seeing
Mini
Coopers, bought a couple of them, right?
Right.
But there's this, and this is the lesson I teach my reps, is that most of this is happening subconsciously, right? You start noticing other cars around town. You're like, man, there's a lot of people buying Mini Coopers. They were already there.
Yeah,
right. Your brain had not just not registered that they were important. Now, sometimes it assumes something's important and it's not. But what I teach my team is that you can flip this switch and turn it on actively, not just subconsciously or passively, but proactively and actively. You can choose what you want to focus on and notice and pay more attention to.
Right.
Is that playing into this whole neuroplasticity approach, or is it two completely separate things?
No, I would agree, but again, as you said, you have to practice that, right? So you have to train them, they have to practice it. And that is neuroplasticity. You're training them then to be able to pick up that data. So that's a very important part. And that's kind of like that operating system part, or the application. What we do then is do that same thing, but they're not even, all they're doing is the exercises, but there's the core underlying process: analysis, synthesis, categorization, classification, abstract sequencing. All those things are trained unconsciously, and kind of like what you said, the basic thinking process from our perspective is break it down, think it through, and execute. Because just as you said, there's constantly data coming into our brains, right? And so our unconscious ability to break it down into components, think through what we want to do with it, and then execute on it, that's what's going to make that execution so efficient, because we're not even thinking about it and the brain is doing it for us.
That's really cool.
So, yeah. In fact,
So John, as you look back on your career, and I think I told you my first name's John, my dad's name's John, so
Yeah.
great name, by the way. But the as you look back on your career, I'm sure it was quite the experience to be embedded with a team of
Yeah.
you
It's
know, I don't know if
incredible.
they're SEALs or Navy
Marines, special
Marines or
operations, all those
whatever.
guys.
But
Yeah.
as you look back on your career, is there an experience that stands out in your mind that really just stays with you? Something that you remember? Maybe it teaches this principle better than others. Is there one that comes to mind that you'd like to share?
Yeah, that's a great question. It's funny. I was just meeting yesterday with one of the Marines I worked with 15 years ago, sharing experiences with great. Probably the thing that really brought it home for me was after working with these Marines for 3 months. At the final pre-deployment training objective, there was they had a simulated situation where the Marines were supposed to see. So they had role players. I was role players. These role players were shooting at like this local party, and the typical way is you wait to see what's going to happen. Well, one of the other platoons ran in and started shooting, right? And so that, and then the very next day when we had a big like a big meeting of the different platoons, what really struck me was the absolute maturity. These are 19, 20-year-old guys, right? Same age as everyone else, but you just got a sense from their confidence, their decision making, their demeanor, their teamwork. And that was very rewarding for me because it wasn't something just, how they're shooting, and I was embedded with them. So sometimes you don't compare until you compare something with someone else. Like, you see your neighbor's kid and all of a sudden he's a foot taller, well, because they haven't seen him in a year, right? So
Yeah.
just to be with those Marines and experience the incredible difference that was made in their lives over those 3 months compared to all the other platoons that were there, that really meant something. But that changed their life. Changed their lives.
Well, there's a lot of areas in our lives where that ability to to sense what's coming, to be more anticipatory, that can be an enormous blessing in business, in parenting, in relationships. I mean, the whole Mars Venus thing. The more I can anticipate what my wife is thinking and how I can help, the better, right?
Right.
But I can't think of a more important area or maybe more critical area than in the military, where it's life or death, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
I might miss a cue with my wife, and she's and I'm sleeping on the couch next, but that doesn't really happen. My wife's amazing, but it's a lot different than a Marine going into they're kicking indoors and there's an IED waiting, or there's life or death. I did want to make a little comment about that. We have a friend who has developed a technology that it measures frequencies of different elements.
Okay.
Every single element has a different frequency, gold and silver, and different. Whether it's gunpowder, whether it's water, whether it's steel, or even different DNAs. This technology can measure that frequency even from miles and miles away. I know that they're talking with the military, and they're having some pretty in-depth conversations, because this is an extraordinary discovery or development. But I can't help but think that would be a benefit to all of our warriors out there if they could identify IEDs before they got to them, right? That could change the game. And so,
well, it is interesting you said that, because in that first event, we went to the EOD shack, and they had like 1,000 different trigger devices, and they're trying to teach the Marines what these would look like. And that's when it really occurred to me, well, if we can improve shape recognition and dimensional viewing, we didn't need to memorize them all. You would just be able to pick up an anomaly of what was different or what was wrong.
right.
And that's one of the things that sold them. And that was so much, because when the brain can pick that up faster, you don't need to memorize 1,000 different, and it's the same thing in sales or anything else, right? If you can pick up unconsciously the differences through pattern recognition and analysis and so forth, you don't need to memorize, 60 different scripts depending on your client.
Right.
In fact, salespeople tell me that. They tell me their sales do so much better because they're able to read their client at the same time they're thinking about what they want to respond in real time. And they said it's almost like they can see the words they need to say form in their mind, and then they just say them. Because a lot of salespeople talk too much, right? Same thing like everything else. Same thing like with the Marines. If there's too much data, you get buried. But when you can stream that data down into something really efficient, then it makes a huge difference.
Distillation, right?
Yeah. Yes. Exactly.
Exactly. Down to the most important piece.
Right.
Interesting.
Right.
Now, have you written a book about this yet? Are you working on a?
No, I'm working on a book. Working on 2 books. I actually am working on a book. So the other thing I've been able to do is apply this to habits. Right? There's a lot of great books out there on habits. Power Habit and Habit Stacking, and all these different techniques.
Yeah.
And they're about habits. It's kind of like about the brain as opposed to changing the brain. So my approach has always been to keep it simple as possible. So I actually, when I work with my clients now, I have a way that I can help anyone change any habit in their life in 30 minutes or less, not 30 days, using the same principles of the brain training. And so that's a book. It's actually, there's a kind of it's on Amazon right now for 99 cents, Hack Your Habit in 30 Days. It's was put out there as a kind of a promo. I'm reworking that one to be more detailed. But, and then I'm also working on I actually do have an Amazon best-selling book from a few years ago, but it was really on small business as opposed to what I want to do. I want to work on a book about what I do.
Yeah.
And that'll come out.
What is the name of it? You said Hacking a Habit in 30 minutes?
Hack Your Habits in 30 minutes or less.
Wow, I might have to order that.
Yeah, and it's actually the actual part. It's the shortest book you've ever seen, and the actual meat of it is about 5 pages. So again, everything's simple. We want everything to be simple.
Wow, that's really cool. So as you work with clients, what does that look like? What's the process of somebody coming to work with you, be it the military or a business client or even an individual?
Yeah, so we have a number of different ways. So basically, I have an executive brain coaching program. So it's 12 weeks. And we meet once a week or twice a week, and we progress. And so every time we meet, we make the brain faster, more focused, and we bring in other parts of their life coaching. I also have I call it a brain training boot camp. So it's 2 weeks, 6 sessions in 2 weeks. It's compressed, and it focuses specifically on the brain training. Some people are in a hurry; they want to get more done faster, really fast. So I have that one. And I just launched a certification program, which I really, really am liking, because right now I have a phenomenal director of training back in Illinois, Tim Stewart, but right now it's just the 2 of us. So when I certify other people, and typically who I'm certifying are people who already have a practice, psychiatrists, DiMartini coaches, physical trainers, sales trainers, whoever it is, they already are comfortable working with people and they have something that works. So when I certify them, they then can add a few minutes of my exercises before every time they meet with a client. So the sessions are really engaging. They're excited, their clients are excited, and they get much better results. So it's a win-win there. And they can also use that as a sales differentiator when they want to sell. But what I'm finding more and more is once they're certified in how to do this, their own performance obviously improves significantly because they have to go through the program. But a lot of them are doing it so they can help their family and friends. I have one woman who want to get certified, so she's working with her class. She's a teacher, but for her parents who are getting older, right? And so she wants to help them pre-dementia. And then another woman has 2 kids. One has some learning disabilities, and the other is an athlete in high school. So now she, instead of having to pay me to do it, she's able now to help her kids. And with families are great because the exercises themselves, if you remember, they're kind of fun, they're engaging, you do them as a group. Everybody starts laughing, and families will typically just like do it over dinner, do it for 5 or 10 minutes at dinner time.
Huh.
And it becomes a regular family fun activity they can do that benefits everybody.
That's
also
great.
Working via Zoom. I do a lot of work in person. If it's a team or a company, I come in and do conferences or sales teams or executive teams in person. But I also do a lot of that over Zoom nowadays.
So I was telling you before we started about this platform that we're streaming from. It's called Rlink, and it's being referred to as the Zoom killer. I call it
Really?
Zoom 2.0 because
Okay.
it's, well, for one thing, Zoom it's massive, of course, public company. They have
Right.
300 million users a day. I don't know if you
Wow.
knew that, but they're
That's why
collecting.
it keeps dropping.
Yeah, they're collecting your data on everything you do, every
Yeah.
conversation you have, every document you upload. It's all being collected by Zoom, and I don't like that. That's not okay.
You're right.
This Arling platform is built on the blockchain. It's not owned by a big company.
Really?
It's owned by the customers, by all of us. So we all own a piece of it, if you will. And it has some pretty neat sales and conversion elements, but my favorite, see, we do business all over the world, and there is a built-in translation feature where I can speak
Wow.
English, you can hear it in Spanish or see it in Spanish if you want. Right now it's just in captions. It does work voice to voice, but there's still a little bit of lag, and they're working on getting that out or removing that. So literally, you can speak German, I can speak English, we understand each other perfectly.
Wow. I'll look into that for sure, Patrick, because I do. I work with people all over the world, and right now they have to speak English.
Yeah, with your
Wow.
business, it would transform it. My friend did a call just last week with a guy from Portugal, or no, excuse me, Brazil, Mexico, the UAE. He was here in the States, and one other one, I think Korea. They were all speaking their own language, and they had a 45-minute conversation. They all understood each
Wow.
other from the captions. And as I said, very soon it'll be you speak and they hear you in their language as well. So, and it's less
Wow.
expensive than Zoom. It's $10 a month for a paid account. So,
Yeah, definitely send me information on it. I'm actually going to be speaking to some hedge fund managers in Morocco in October. But the follow up, I don't speak Arabic and I speak very little French. So
yeah,
this would be perfect for that. Yeah,
totally.
definitely send me some information. That's great.
I'll do that. If anybody is interested in learning more, they can reach out to me.
Yeah.
And our number is 888-684-3122. That's our office number. And just ask for Patrick. They can get you to me. But I've enjoyed having you on the show, John, as we're winding down toward the end. This is actually the first time I've live streamed from our link.
Okay.
We recently started using it, so it seems to be working well. We'll put it
Yeah.
out on all the podcast channels as well. It's on, we're syndicated on Spotify and iHeartRadio and so forth and so on. But anything else you'd share? Anything we've missed, or anything you wanted to add to it?
Just really enjoy this. One of the things I like to just, because we talk about working with uncomfortable people, I just always kind of like to leave people with just some hope. So a lot of the people we work with who are struggling, they've given up on traditional, post-traumatic stress or autism or ADHD or dementia. People after a while, they start to give up hope. Well, they shouldn't, because we can help them. And also, even the guys in their career or athletes, right? They put their whole heart into it. They've done the mind training, and they're starting to give up hope that they're going to reach that level they want to. So again, those are the other end of the spectrum, but those are the people we like to work with.
That's great. How does somebody get a hold of you, John?
So my email is john@combatbraintraining.com.
Okay.
The website is combatbraintraining.com. It's about 80% done. It's very functional. We're going to be adding some more features. And then that's probably the best. Email me or go to our website and put some information. Be great. By the way, as we're talking, I just got a text. So Kat Perez, my goalie, we're working on PKs, penalty kicks. She told me she just stopped 4 penalty kicks in practice. So it means it's working.
That's great. We just got a comment on our YouTube channel that said great info, 100%. So
awesome.
I think this can help a lot of people, John. You have whether stumbled across or uncovered or discovered this kind of secret weapon, I think, that can bless people's lives in so many ways, in so many arenas, right? And ultimately, our quest for certainty in our lives, I've learned three things, right? Number one, we have to desire it. We have to want to make
Right. Yeah.
improvement. Yeah, it all starts with that desire, that wish, right? We might have to go through that confidence cycle. We might start with fear and move on up to confidence eventually, but we've got to want it, right?
Yeah. Right.
Secondly, we have to be open to input, right? I don't think we ever get to where we want to go without surrounding ourselves and learning from mentors and coaches and getting feedback from others just like yourself.
Yeah. Yeah.
And third, we just got to keep trying. We're going to fall, we're going to fail, we're going to stumble. We got to fail forward, as they say. You got to pick yourself up and keep going. Back to my comment about perspective and fortitude. Fortitude is as important as the perspective part. The perspective might make it easier, but the fortitude means we keep going. We don't give up, right? So much of what we feel in our lives is being dictated by what we think. Emotions are energy in motion, and if we change our thoughts, we can change how we feel and have a little bit more perspective, have a little bit more fortitude, and do a little bit more, accomplish a little bit more, not give up, And so I really appreciate having you on the show today. It's been
great, Patrick. Yeah, I really enjoy it. You're a great interviewer. I really appreciate the questions and sharing our childhood. That was similar. That was kind of fun.
So, yeah, 100%. Well, I've enjoyed getting to know you. I'm looking forward to learning more and maybe having you come in and do some of this work for our team. I think that should be the next step. I think this could benefit everyone on our team at Certainty Management, and we got some really great people. They're working really hard. They're accomplishing some great things, but I think you could help all of them help take it to the next level. So maybe when we jump off the recording here, let's talk a little bit about what that looks like. So if you'd like to learn more, reach out to John at combatbraintraining.com, right?
Yes. Yeah. Don't forget the brain part. Yeah.
But the website is Combat Brain Train. Is that correct? No ING on
it. So it's combatbraintraining.com is a website. And by the way, I should have mentioned, we also have a video series on there if people are interested. And then my email is john@combatbraintraining.com.
So are they both training with an ING on the end?
Yes, both training, because that's what we do. We don't really, we're just training the brain. We're not even teaching so much, but just physically training the brain for combat, right? We're all business leader. We're all in some form of combat, right? Created for the warfighter, but we all have battles to win. So, like I said,
life comes at us fast, and then we die, right?
That's right. That's right.
Let's make the most of it. I always say this: it's possible to enjoy more certainty in your lives. It's out there. We can help. Yeah. Thank you for listening to us today, and have a great rest of the week. And come back next week. I'm going to be doing my monologue. I'm up to R, but I won't tell you what it is until you. R is for fill in the blank. You got to come on Wednesday morning, 11 o'clock Pacific, to learn one more secret, one more characteristic that can lead to certainty in your life. So thanks so much. Have a great rest of the week, everybody, and we'll talk to you next week.
Thanks again, Patrick.
Absolutely.